She traded herself for food and shelter. But the rancher gave her a wedding ring and built her a room. The wind on the frontier world carried fine red dust that clung to everything it touched. It settled on metal roofs, on solar panels, on the wide leaves of the engineered crops that grew in neat lines across the open land. The sky above was pale and wide, stretching endlessly in soft shades of blue and gold. This was a quiet place, far from the crowded cities of human space and even farther from the busy trade lanes where ships passed every hour. Lyra walked slowly across the dry ground, her steps unsteady. Her thin boots were worn, the soles almost smooth from months of travel. The small pack on her back held very little, just a water flask with a few drops left and a folded piece of cloth that once belonged to her family. Her species was tall and light-framed, with soft gray skin and eyes that reflected light like polished stone. She had crossed 3 systems and many worlds, always moving, always looking for a place where she could stay longer than a few days. Ahead of her, she saw a ranch. It was not large by human standards, but to Lyra it looked like a kingdom. A long, low building made of metal and stone stood at the center, with wide windows that caught the sunlight. Tall poles rose from the ground around it, humming softly as they adjusted the air and weather in the fields. Rows of green and silver plants grew in the soil, their leaves opening and closing slowly as if breathing. Strange, gentle animals grazed nearby, their bodies shaped to help clean the air and enrich the land. Lyra stopped at the edge of the property. Her legs trembled. She had not eaten real food in 2 days. The nutrient packs she carried were gone, and the last station she visited had turned her away when she could not pay. She looked at the ranch and felt a mix of hope and fear. In her culture, when you were desperate, you made an offer. She took a deep breath and walked forward. Jonah Hale was repairing a weather pylon when he noticed movement at the far end of his field. He straightened up, shading his eyes with one hand. Visitors were rare out here. Most people preferred the comfort of stations or towns. Those who did come usually arrived by ship, not on foot. He saw a tall, thin figure walking slowly toward his home. Jonah climbed down from the pylon and wiped his hands on his work pants. He walked across the field, the soft soil giving slightly under his boots. As he got closer, he could see that the stranger looked exhausted. Her shoulders were slumped and her steps were careful, like each one took effort. He stopped a few steps away, keeping his voice calm and friendly. "Hey there," he said. "You all right?" Lyra looked up at him. The human was taller and broader than most she had seen, with sun-browned skin and lines at the corners of his eyes that spoke of years spent under open skies. His voice was not sharp or demanding. It was simple, steady. She swallowed and spoke in careful, basic trade language. "I need food and shelter," Jonah nodded. "Yeah, I can help with that. You lost. Nearest station's a long walk from here." Lyra hesitated. This was the moment she had prepared for. She reached into her pack and pulled out nothing, then lowered her hand. "I have nothing to trade," she said. "But I can work, I can clean, carry, fix. I can stay and belong to you if that is what you want. Just give me a place to sleep and something to eat." The words came out in a rush, practiced and heavy. Jonah stared at her. For a moment he thought he had misunderstood. He had dealt with traders, travelers, and settlers, but no one had ever spoken to him like this. "Belong to me?" he repeated slowly. Lyra nodded. In her world, people were often tied to others by need. It was normal. Survival was an agreement. You gave yourself, and in return you lived. Jonah felt something twist in his chest. "No," he said gently, "that's not how it works here." Lyra's eyes flickered with confusion. "Then I will leave." "Hold on," Jonah said quickly. "I didn't say you can't stay. I just said you don't have to give yourself to anyone to earn a meal." He gestured toward the house. "Come on, you look like you're about to fall over." Lyra hesitated. This did not fit into any rule she knew. Still, her body moved before her mind could argue. She followed him. Inside the house, the air was cooler. The walls were lined with shelves full of tools, books, and small objects from places Jonah had visited over the years. A simple table stood in the center, with 2 chairs on either side. Jonah went to a small cooking unit and started preparing food. The smell of warm grain and roasted vegetables filled the room. Lyra stood near the door, unsure where to put her hands, where to look. "Sit," Jonah said, nodding to a chair. She did. He placed a bowl in front of her and a cup of water beside it. She stared at the food like it might disappear. "It's okay," he said. "It's yours." Lyra picked up the spoon with shaking fingers. The first bite made her eyes widen. It was warm, real, full of flavor and texture that nutrient packs could never give. She ate slowly at first, then faster as her body remembered what it meant to be fed. Jonah watched quietly, leaning against the counter. When she finished, she looked up, embarrassed by how empty the bowl was. "Thank you," she said. "You're welcome," Jonah replied. "What's your name?" "Lyra." "I'm Jonah." They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the house systems filling the space between them. "Where are you from?" Jonah asked. Lyra looked down at her hands. "A place that no longer exists." He nodded. He didn't press. That night, Jonah gave her a small room near the back of the house. It was simple, just a bed, a light, and a shelf. But to Lyra, it felt larger than any place she had ever stayed. She sat on the edge of the bed, touching the fabric of the blanket like it was something rare. She did not sleep much. Her mind kept waiting for a price to be named. Morning came with soft light through the window and the sound of distant animals in the field. Jonah knocked on her door. "Breakfast is ready, and if you're feeling up to it, I can show you around." Lyra stepped outside into the open land. The air was clean and cool. The field stretched out in every direction, and the sky seemed close enough to touch. Jonah walked beside her, pointing out different parts of the ranch. "These plants help keep the soil strong," he said. "Those animals clean the air as they graze. Everything here works together. You take care of the land, and it takes care of you." Lyra listened carefully, storing every word. He showed her how to carry water to the smaller plants, how to check the weather pylons, how to gather the soft fibers that the animals shed naturally. She worked slowly but with care. Her hands were used to hard labor, but this felt different. This was not about surviving one more day. This was about making something last. As the sun climbed higher, Jonah handed her a small tool. "You don't have to stay, you know," he said. "You're welcome here, but it's your choice." Lyra looked at him, truly looked at him. Choice was a strange word. "I will stay," she said. "If you will let me." Jonah smiled. "I already did." That evening, as they sat on the steps of the house watching the sky turn orange and purple, Lyra felt something new settle inside her. It was not safety. It was not even comfort. It was the quiet idea that tomorrow existed, and she might still be here when it came. Far above them, a ship crossed the sky, its light fading into the distance. Lyra watched it go and did not feel the pull to follow. The next morning, Lyra woke to the soft glow of the sun filtering through her small window. The room Jonah had given her was simple but comfortable. A narrow bed, a wooden shelf, and a small table held everything she needed. For the first time in her life, she realized she owned a space that was hers alone, not borrowed, not temporary, not promised in exchange for labor or survival. She sat on the edge of the bed and let her fingers trace the smooth surface of the table. The air smelled faintly of baked grain and the clean scent of the outside world that drifted in through the open window. She could hear the low hum of the weather pylons in the distance and the gentle rustle of leaves from the engineered plants outside. These sounds were unfamiliar but not unpleasant. They were peaceful. When she finally got up, she dressed quickly in the simple clothes Jonah had given her, a shirt of soft fabric and pants that fit loosely, allowing freedom of movement. She stepped outside and took a deep breath. The air felt lighter here than anywhere she had ever been. It was as if the land itself was welcoming her. Jonah was already outside, tending to the smaller of the climate-controlled animals that roamed the ranch. They were gentle creatures with long, curved necks and soft fur. Their movements were slow and careful, almost as if they were aware of the presence of a visitor. Lyra watched for a moment, unsure how to begin. "Morning," Jonah said, smiling. "Ready to start the day?" I think so," Lyra replied. Her voice sounded small even to her own ears. He handed her a pair of gloves. "These will help. Don't worry, you'll get used to the work quickly." The first task was to check the water channels that ran along the fields. Jonah demonstrated how to release the right amount of water into each section, how to adjust the flow for different plants, and how to notice when the soil was too dry or too wet. Lyra followed his instructions carefully. Her hands moved with a mixture of hesitation and determination, feeling the life of the plants beneath her fingers. "You're careful," Jonah observed. "That's good. Care can grow more than strength ever will." Lyra looked at him, surprised by the thought. In her culture, strength was the only thing that mattered. Care and patience were often seen as weakness. But here, in this quiet place, Jonah's words made sense. She felt a small warmth rise inside her chest, something that was not fear or hunger. As the day passed, Jonah guided her through the routines of the ranch. She learned to gather the soft fibers the animals shed naturally, to check the weather pylons for errors, and to repair small tools. Every task was simple in itself, but together they formed a rhythm, a life she had not known she was capable of having. During a break, Jonah brought out a small meal for her. The food smelled fragrant, and Lyra realized that this was the second meal she had had in 2 days that was more than just sustenance. She sat on a wooden bench and ate slowly, savoring each bite, aware that she did not need to rush or hide her hunger. "You're doing well," Jonah said. He handed her a cup of water. "Most people think surviving is enough, but living, truly living, takes more." Lyra did not reply. She thought about his words, turning them over in her mind. Surviving was all she had ever known. Living seemed like something distant, almost impossible. Yet here it was, stretching before her in small, tangible moments. The warmth of sunlight on her skin, the sound of leaves rustling, the quiet satisfaction of completing a task well. As the afternoon sun rose higher, Jonah suggested they visit the new section of the ranch he had been building quietly for weeks. Lyra followed him, curious. They walked across the fields, passing rows of plants that shimmered in silver and green, moving in subtle waves as if breathing with the wind. The animals followed them, their soft sounds blending with the hum of the pylons. At the far end of the property, a structure took shape. It was small, modest, but unlike any other part of the ranch. The walls were clean and straight, the roof sturdy, and the windows were positioned to catch the morning light. Jonah stepped back and gestured toward it. "This is for you," he said simply. Lyra stared. Her mind froze. She had not expected anything like this. In her world, people rarely gave space or permanence to someone who could leave at any moment. This was more than food or shelter. This was a statement, a promise that she mattered. I don't understand," she said finally. Jonah smiled. "You don't have to understand, you just need to know that it's yours, a place to sleep, a place to rest, a place to call home if you want it." Lyra stepped closer, running her hand over the smooth surface of the wall. The touch sent a strange sensation through her, a mix of disbelief and warmth. She had never owned anything that was truly hers. Never had she been trusted to stay without expectation. "Will I have to work here?" she asked cautiously. "No more than you want to," Jonah replied. "You can help with the ranch if you like, but you don't have to. This room is yours, no conditions." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She bent down and touched the soil at the base of the building, a small, instinctive gesture of gratitude. She felt a connection to this land, to this place, in a way she had never felt anywhere else. Over the next few days, she settled into her room and began helping Jonah more regularly, not out of obligation, but because she found joy in the work. She planted seeds, repaired tools, and tended to the animals. Each task taught her patience and care. She learned to listen to the subtle rhythms of the land, the way the plants bent toward the sun, the way the animals shifted with the wind, the soft hum of the pylons adjusting to changes in the weather. Jonah watched her closely, offering guidance when needed, but allowing her space to learn and explore on her own. He taught her not only how to work, but how to think about the land and the life it supported. He explained how every plant, every animal, every tool, and every effort was connected. Lyra began to understand that life was not a series of transactions, but a web of relationships, fragile, beautiful, and worth protecting. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Jonah brought her a small cup of tea. They sat together on the steps of the house, listening to the distant hum of the ranch and the soft calls of the animals. "You're different from anyone I've ever met," Jonah said. "Most people think survival is the same everywhere. They think that if you can endure, you can live. But living is more than enduring. Living is noticing, caring, choosing." Lyra nodded. She did not know the words in her own language for what she felt. Gratitude was one, but it did not capture the warmth that spread through her chest. Belonging, maybe, or perhaps hope. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future, not just one day at a time, but weeks, months, perhaps even years. She imagined waking to the sound of the wind and the animals, tending the land, and having a place to return to at the end of the day. A place that was hers. The days passed in a rhythm of work, rest, and quiet reflection. Lyra found herself smiling more often. She laughed softly at small mistakes, felt satisfaction when a plant thrived or an animal responded to her care, and learned to speak freely with Jonah about the tasks and the world around them. She also noticed the subtle ways Jonah cared for her. He never demanded anything she could not give, never questioned her presence, and always offered choices. The ranch became a space where she could grow, where she could learn about patience, responsibility, and the quiet strength of kindness. One afternoon, a gentle breeze brought the scent of distant wildflowers, and Lyra realized that she no longer felt the constant ache of hunger. She had eaten, rested, and found comfort. More importantly, she had found trust. The feeling was foreign and unsettling, but she welcomed it. That night, Lyra lay in her new room, listening to the soft creaks of the house settling under the stars. The room felt alive in a quiet way. The walls, the bed, even the small table held the presence of care. She thought about Jonah's words, about choice and living, about the future. She understood for the first time that survival was no longer the only goal. She could do more than endure. She could live. And in that understanding, she found a peace she had never known. She slept deeply, without fear, without urgency, and without the constant weight of the unknown pressing on her. For the first time, the frontier world felt like home. The next morning, she awoke before the sun, feeling the excitement of a new day. She stepped outside into the fields, ready to continue learning, working, and discovering. The plants shimmered in the morning light, the animals moved gracefully, and the air was clean and full of possibilities. Jonah greeted her with a warm smile. "Ready?" Lyra nodded, feeling a quiet joy swell inside her. "Yes." And as they walked together across the fields, she realized that she had finally found something she never thought possible. A place where she belonged, a place where she could grow, a place where the future was hers to shape. The ranch was no longer just land. It was a home, and it was hers to explore, nurture, and cherish. The morning light filtered softly through the small window of Lyra's room. She sat on the edge of the bed, brushing her hair and watching the sun rise over the open fields. The sky was a calm blue, streaked with the first hints of gold. The air smelled of damp soil and growing plants, a scent that had begun to feel like home. She stretched and took a deep breath, feeling a quiet sense of possibility she had never known before. Outside, Jonah was already moving among the plants, checking the weather pylons and making small adjustments. The animals wandered near the fields, their soft calls mixing with the hum of machinery. Lyra felt a new energy stirring inside her, a desire not just to survive but to learn, to understand, and to belong. She stepped outside, careful not to disturb the balance of the ranch. Jonah noticed her and waved. "Good morning, Lyra. Ready for today?" She nodded. "Yes." They began the day with the usual chores, watering the plants, feeding the animals, and checking the systems. But today, Jonah introduced something new. He led her to a small table near the edge of the fields. On it lay several small objects, tools, books, and a few simple machines. "These are for you," Jonah said, "not because you need them, but because I want you to have the chance to explore and learn." Lyra looked at the objects. She had never owned tools or books of her own. In her world, items were borrowed, traded, or taken. She reached out carefully, touching a small device that measured soil moisture. It felt heavy in her hands, not because of its weight, but because of the responsibility it represented. "I don't know how to use these," she admitted. "That's why you'll learn," Jonah replied. "Not everything comes with instructions. Sometimes you have to figure things out for yourself." She spent the morning experimenting with the tools, learning how to measure soil and test plant health. Jonah observed quietly, offering guidance only when she asked. The process was slow, sometimes frustrating, but also thrilling. She realized that learning was not a punishment or a requirement, it was a gift. By midday, Lyra had begun to understand the basics of plant care and soil testing. She looked across the fields and felt a sense of pride. For the first time, her work had a purpose beyond survival. It mattered. The plants depended on her, the animals depended on her, and the land itself seemed to respond to her touch. During lunch, Jonah brought her a plate of warm food and sat with her on the steps of the house. The air was warm, and the light made the fields shimmer. "You've been here for a while now," Jonah said gently. "Have you thought about what you want?" Lyra hesitated. She had not expected this question. In her past, there had always been choices, but they were limited: survive, leave, trade, or die. Here, the idea of choice felt strange, almost overwhelming. I don't know," she admitted. "I am not used to having options." "That's okay," Jonah said. "You don't have to decide anything right away, but it's important to know that you can. You can choose how to live, who to be, and where to stay." Lyra nodded, feeling a small spark of hope. The idea that she could shape her own life was both exciting and terrifying. She thought about the room Jonah had built for her, the tools, the food, and the quiet trust he had shown her. It was unlike anything she had ever experienced. After lunch, Jonah led her to a small grove of trees at the edge of the property. The trees were young, but their leaves were thick and healthy. He handed Lyra a small sapling. "This is yours," he said. "Plant it, care for it, watch it grow. It will teach you patience and responsibility in ways nothing else can." Lyra knelt in the soft soil and planted the sapling carefully, her fingers brushing against the earth. She watered it gently, feeling a deep connection to the life she had placed in the ground. As she worked, she realized that the act of caring for something small and fragile gave her a sense of purpose she had never felt before. The afternoon passed in a rhythm of learning and discovery. Jonah showed her how to identify the different plants and animals, how to adjust the water and nutrients, and how to notice subtle changes in the land. Lyra absorbed everything, her mind stretching to understand not just the tasks, but the deeper connections that made the ranch thrive. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Jonah and Lyra sat together on the porch of the house. The animals settled into the fields, and the wind carried the scent of soil and growing plants. "You've changed since you arrived," Jonah said, "not just in what you can do, but in how you see the world." Lyra looked at him, unsure what to say. She had never been praised for understanding or insight. She had been praised only for survival, for endurance, for strength. Here, her mind and heart were being recognized in a way that felt new and precious. I am learning," she said finally. "Not just about the ranch, but about everything." "That's good," Jonah replied. "Learning is more than knowledge. It's understanding, noticing, caring. You're starting to live, not just survive." The next few days brought more lessons. Jonah introduced her to basic engineering tasks, repairing the weather pylons, adjusting irrigation channels, and maintaining the animals' shelters. Lyra discovered that she enjoyed problem-solving, figuring out how things worked, and finding small improvements. She began to see patterns and connections in ways that surprised even her. One morning, a small group of travelers arrived at the ranch. They were human and alien, carrying goods and stories from distant systems. Lyra watched as Jonah greeted them warmly, offering food and rest without asking for payment. She realized that the ranch was becoming a place of trust and kindness, not just survival. The travelers were curious about her, asking questions about the plants and animals, the soil, and the daily routines. Lyra answered as best she could, sharing what she had learned. The travelers smiled, nodding with respect and interest. For the first time, she felt seen, not as a resource, not as someone to be traded, but as a person with knowledge and value. That night, after the travelers had moved on, Lyra and Jonah sat by the small fire outside. The stars were bright and clear, scattered across the sky like diamonds. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of earth and growing things. "I have a question," Lyra said softly. "About humans, about the ways you do things. Why do you offer kindness without expecting trade?" Jonah thought for a moment. "Because it matters, because life is better when you trust and care for each other. You don't need to survive alone. You can thrive together. That is what I believe." Lyra considered his words. In her culture, trust was earned only through actions and survival. Kindness without conditions was almost unheard of. Yet here, she felt it in every gesture, every meal, every tool, every room that had been built for her. "I want to understand," she said. "I want to be like that." "You already are in many ways," Jonah replied. "You just need time to see it for yourself." The days turned into weeks. Lyra's confidence grew as she learned more about the ranch, the land, and Jonah's ways. She discovered that small acts of care, watering a plant, repairing a tool, feeding an animal, had a ripple effect. Each act made the ranch stronger, healthier, more alive. She realized that her own life, her presence, contributed to something larger than herself. One afternoon, Jonah brought her to the edge of the property. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, carrying the scent of distant flowers. He handed her a small wooden box. "This is for you," he said. "Open it when you're ready." Lyra took the box carefully, feeling its weight and the significance it held. When she opened it, she found a small ring, simple and unadorned, made from recycled metal and a crystal from the nearby hills. She looked up at Jonah, confused. "It's for me?" she asked. "Yes," Jonah said. "It's a symbol, not a promise, not a contract, not a trade, just a choice. You can wear it if you want, as a reminder that this place and the people here are yours if you choose to stay. Tears filled Lyra's eyes. She had never been offered a choice like this, never had the freedom to decide her own place in the world without fear or obligation. She touched the ring gently, feeling the smooth surface beneath her fingers. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say nothing, Jonah replied. Just know that it's yours and so is this place. That night, Lyra sat by her window, looking at the stars. She held the ring in her hand, feeling its weight and meaning. She thought about the travelers, the animals, the plants, and the gentle trust Jonah had shown her. For the first time, she understood that life could be about more than survival. It could be about choice, care, and connection. She realized that she was beginning to belong, not because she had given herself, not because she had earned it, but because she had been welcomed. The thought brought a quiet, steady warmth that filled her chest. And for the first time in her life, Lyra felt the future stretching before her, full of possibilities, not threats. The ranch was no longer just a place to hide or survive. It was a home, a place of learning, a place of growth, and a place of choice. And Lyra knew, deep in her heart, that she wanted to be here, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. As she drifted to sleep that night, the stars outside her window twinkled like distant promises, and she whispered softly to herself, I am home. The morning sun shone through Lyra's window, warm and gentle, and for the first time she woke without the tight knot of worry in her chest. Her room, small but bright, smelled faintly of wood and sunlight. She stretched, listening to the distant calls of the animals and the quiet hum of the ranch. Everything felt familiar now, comfortable, almost like a rhythm she had learned without realizing it. She dressed quickly in her simple clothes and stepped outside. The air was crisp, carrying the sense of earth and growing plants. The ranch was alive with motion. Birds with colorful feathers flitted from one weather-stabilizing tree to another, the animals grazed quietly, and the plants shimmered softly in the sunlight. Lyra took a deep breath. She felt a quiet joy rising in her chest. She had a place here, a purpose, and something she could call her own. Jonah was already at work repairing a section of the irrigation channel. He looked up and waved. Good morning, Lyra. Ready for another day? I am, she replied. She stepped closer, feeling the warmth of the sun on her skin and the gentle hum of life all around her. Jonah handed her a small notebook and a pencil. I want you to start keeping track of the plants. Write down when they bloom, how they grow, and any changes you notice. It will help you understand the land, and it will help the ranch thrive. Lyra took the notebook, feeling its weight and the responsibility it carried. She had never recorded observations or kept notes before. In her past, everything was temporary. Here, every observation mattered. Every detail could make a difference. They spent the morning walking through the fields together. Jonah taught her how to observe the subtle signs in the plants, the way a leaf curled, the way a stem bent, the color of the soil. Lyra followed closely, taking careful notes. She was surprised at how satisfying the work felt, how much pride she took in simply noticing, recording, and understanding. By midday, the sun had climbed high, and Jonah suggested they take a break. He led her to a small grove at the edge of the property where the soil was soft and the trees provided shade. He handed her a warm meal and a cup of water. You've been learning quickly, he said. Not just the work, but the way the land speaks. That is something few people ever notice. Lyra smiled faintly, feeling a small sense of accomplishment. It is different, she admitted. I have never paid attention in this way before. That is the beauty of life here, Jonah replied. Everything matters, even the smallest things, and when you care, the world responds. They ate in silence for a while, listening to the soft rustle of leaves and the distant hum of the pylons. Then Jonah spoke again. Lyra, I want to show you something important. Curiosity sparked. Lyra followed him across the fields. They arrived at the small building at the far edge of the ranch, the room he had built for her. But today it was different. The door was open, and inside, a small table had been set up with several simple items. There were tools she had not seen before, small plants in pots, and a few objects that shimmered gently in the sunlight. I thought you might like to try planting your own crops, Jonah said. Not just the ones I care for, but your own. You can experiment, learn, and see what works best. It will be your corner of the ranch. Lyra stepped inside slowly. She ran her fingers over the small pots, feeling the soil and the tiny shoots beginning to grow. Her heart lifted. This was more than trust. It was an invitation to create, to nurture, to experiment. For the first time, she had complete control over something in her life. She began planting carefully, arranging the pots and marking notes in her notebook. Jonah watched silently, offering guidance only when she asked. She realized that learning here was not forced. It was a gift, a chance to grow without fear or pressure. Days passed in a rhythm of discovery. Lyra learned the cycles of the plants, the way they responded to light, water, and care. She experimented with different combinations, noting which thrived and which needed more attention. Every small success brought a quiet satisfaction. Every failure was a lesson, not a punishment. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in soft shades of pink and gold, Jonah brought her a small wooden box. Lyra looked at it, puzzled. "It's for you," he said. "Open it when you're ready." She opened the box carefully and found a small ring inside, simple and elegant. The metal was smooth and a small crystal glimmered in the light. She looked up at Jonah, her eyes wide. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It is," Jonah said, "but it is more than beauty. It is a symbol, not a promise, not a contract, not an expectation. Just a reminder that this place, this land, and the people here are yours if you choose to stay. It is a choice, not an obligation." Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had never been offered a choice like this. Never had she been trusted without condition. She touched the ring gently, feeling its weight and meaning. I don't know what to say," she said softly. "Say nothing," Jonah replied. "Just know it is yours." Over the next few weeks, Lyra began to understand the meaning of the ring. It was not a chain or a bond. It was freedom. Freedom to choose her place in the world, freedom to care for the land and animals, freedom to belong without obligation. She wore the ring on her finger, feeling a quiet connection to the land, to Jonah, and to the life she was building. The ranch itself seemed to respond to her care. The plants grew stronger, the animals more lively, and the small corner she tended flourished under her attention. She began to take pride not only in her work, but in the growth and life around her. Every day brought new lessons, new discoveries, and a deeper understanding of the world. One afternoon, a traveling group arrived at the ranch. They were human and alien, carrying small goods and messages from distant systems. Lyra watched as Jonah welcomed them warmly, offering food and rest without asking for payment. She realized that the ranch was more than a home. It was a sanctuary, a place where trust and kindness were the currency, not survival alone. The travelers asked Lyra questions about the plants and animals, the land, and her daily routines. She answered carefully, feeling a quiet pride in sharing what she had learned. The travelers nodded and smiled, their respect and interest clear. For the first time, she felt truly seen, not as someone to trade or a resource, but as a person with knowledge, insight, and value. That night, as the stars appeared in the clear sky, Lyra sat with Jonah by a small fire outside. The air was cool, carrying the scent of soil and growing plants. She held the ring in her hand, feeling its smooth surface and the quiet meaning it carried. "I think I understand now," she said softly. "Why humans, why you offer trust and kindness without expectation. It is powerful." Jonah nodded. "It is. Life is better when you trust and care for each other. You don't have to survive alone. You can thrive together." Lyra thought about the plants, the animals, the travelers, and the small corner of the ranch that was hers. She realized that she was not just surviving. She was learning, growing, and belonging. The feeling was unfamiliar but welcome, a warmth that filled her heart and mind. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Lyra's confidence grew as she learned more about the land, the cycles of life, and the quiet connections that held everything together. She discovered that every small act of care, watering a plant, repairing a tool, feeding an animal, had a ripple effect, strengthening the ranch and deepening her sense of purpose. She also began to notice subtle changes in herself. She laughed more freely, her mind was sharper, and her heart felt lighter. The constant ache of hunger and fear that had accompanied her for so long was gone. In its place was a steady calm, a sense of belonging and the quiet joy of living. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, Jonah and Lyra walked through the fields together. The animals grazed quietly and the plants shimmered in the soft light. "You've grown so much," Jonah said, "not just in skill but in understanding. You see the connections, the life, and the importance of care. That is rare." Lyra smiled faintly, feeling a warmth she had never known before. I have learned more than I ever imagined, not just about the land, but about myself and about people and life. Jonah nodded. That is the reward of living, not just surviving. As night fell, Lyra returned to her room. She placed the ring carefully on the small table beside her bed, touching it with reverence. She thought about the days behind her, the lessons learned, and the life she was building. She realized that she had found something extraordinary, a place where she could belong, a place where she could grow, and a place where she could be free to choose. She lay down and looked out the window at the stars. They twinkled like distant promises, each one a reminder of the possibilities that awaited her. She whispered softly to herself, "I am home." The morning light was soft, spilling over the fields in a golden glow. Lyra stepped out of her room, taking a deep breath. The air smelled of fresh soil and growing plants, and the quiet calls of animals carried across the ranch. She felt calm and steady, no longer the exhausted traveler who had first arrived months ago. She had learned the rhythms of the land, the ways of the animals, and the subtle patterns that governed growth and life. This place was no longer just a shelter, it was her home. Jonah was already tending the crops, his movements practiced and sure. He looked up and smiled when he saw her. "Good morning, Lyra. Ready to see how far we've come?" Lyra nodded. She followed him across the fields, noting how lush and vibrant the crops had become. The small plots she had planted now thrived alongside Jonah's carefully tended fields. The animals moved calmly, confident in their routines, and the small systems of water and air worked in harmony. Everything seemed alive with quiet energy. "You've done a lot here," Jonah said, gesturing to the flourishing land. "Not just the work, but your care, your attention. This place is better because you are here." Lyra smiled faintly, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, she understood what it meant to belong somewhere, to contribute without being forced, to matter without trading herself for survival. As they walked, a small group of travelers approached the ranch. They were human and alien, carrying goods, messages, and small machines. Lyra noticed the way they looked at the ranch, with curiosity, respect, and a hint of wonder. She remembered the first travelers she had met months ago and how uncertain she had felt in their presence. Now she greeted them with confidence, offering guidance, answering questions, and showing them the plants and animals she had nurtured. The travelers watched her carefully, impressed by her knowledge and skill. For the first time, Lyra felt the quiet pride of recognition, not for survival, but for understanding, care, and thoughtfulness. She realized that she had grown in ways she could never have imagined. After the travelers had moved on, Jonah and Lyra walked to the grove at the edge of the property. The sapling she had planted months ago now stood taller, its leaves stretching toward the sun. She knelt beside it, brushing her fingers against the soil, feeling a deep connection to the life she had nurtured. "It has grown well," Jonah said softly, "just like you." Lyra looked up at him, surprised. "Me? You've grown in patience, in understanding, in care. You've learned to see the world not just for what it is, but for what it can be. That is rare." Lyra smiled, feeling a quiet pride. For the first time, she understood that growth was not measured in strength or speed, but in understanding, in kindness, and in the small choices that shaped the future. The afternoon brought new lessons. Jonah showed her advanced techniques for soil enrichment and plant care, ways to strengthen the animals' habitats, and methods to predict weather patterns using subtle environmental cues. Lyra absorbed everything eagerly, her mind open and curious. She discovered the joy of experimentation, of trial and error, and of seeing the results of her careful attention flourish over time. By evening, they returned to the house. Jonah had prepared a simple meal, and they ate together, savoring the flavors of fresh vegetables, warm bread, and a small treat from a local orchard. The light from the setting sun painted the fields and house in warm shades of orange and pink. "You've changed this place," Jonah said quietly, "and it has changed you. But the most important thing is not the land or the animals or even the crops. It is what you have learned about yourself." Lyra thought about the months that had passed, the moment she had arrived, exhausted and uncertain, offering herself for survival, and the journey that had followed. She had learned to care without fear, to belong without obligation, and to grow without expectation. She had discovered freedom, trust, and the quiet joy of being needed not for labor, but for herself. She reached for the small ring Jonah had given her months ago. It sat on the table, glinting softly in the firelight. She picked it up, feeling its smooth surface against her fingers. The ring was more than a symbol. It was a reminder of choice, trust, and the life she had built. She slid it onto her finger, feeling a sense of belonging that ran deeper than she had ever imagined. The night was quiet. Lyra stepped outside, holding the ring in her hand as she gazed at the stars. She thought about the future, the possibilities, the growth, and the life that stretched before her. For the first time, the horizon did not feel threatening. It felt like a canvas, waiting for her to shape it with care and intention. In the weeks that followed, the ranch grew not just in crops and animals, but in community. Travelers began to arrive regularly, seeking guidance, rest, and knowledge. Lyra helped them, teaching what she had learned and sharing her experiences. She discovered the joy of mentoring, of passing on knowledge, and of seeing others thrive because of her guidance. Jonah watched quietly, proud but never boastful. He understood that Lyra's growth was not his alone, nor was it the result of instruction alone. It was the combination of opportunity, choice, and the freedom to learn and care. He had offered her a home, a room, and trust, but she had built something far greater on top of that foundation: confidence, understanding, and belonging. One afternoon, a young traveler arrived at the ranch, carrying only a small pack and a look of uncertainty. Lyra greeted him with a warm smile. "Welcome," she said. "You are safe here. We can help you rest, eat, and learn." The young traveler's eyes widened in surprise, and he nodded shyly. Lyra guided him to the small house, offering him food and a place to sleep. As he settled in, she realized that the ranch had become a sanctuary, a place of trust and growth, a place where people could belong without fear or obligation. That evening, as the sun set and the sky turned shades of pink and gold, Lyra and Jonah sat together on the porch, watching the fields and animals. The quiet hum of the pylons blended with the rustling of leaves, creating a peaceful symphony. "You've done something remarkable here," Jonah said softly. "Not just for yourself, but for everyone who comes through. You've created more than a home. You've created a place of hope." Lyra smiled, feeling the depth of his words. "I never thought I could belong," she said. "I never thought anyone would trust me without conditions. But now I understand. I have a place and I can make a difference." Jonah nodded. "And that is the most important thing anyone can do, to find where they belong and to help others do the same." In the months that followed, Lyra continued to learn, grow, and guide. The ranch flourished, not just because of the land, but because of the care and attention she gave to everything and everyone around her. The animals thrived, the plants grew strong and healthy, and travelers found comfort and guidance in the safety of the ranch. Lyra found joy in the simple routines: tending the crops, caring for the animals, repairing tools, observing the subtle changes in the soil and sky. She discovered patience in waiting for plants to grow, understanding in observing the animals, and satisfaction in seeing the results of careful attention. She also discovered a deeper connection with Jonah. Their friendship had grown into a quiet bond built on trust, respect, and mutual understanding. They shared the work, the successes, and even the small failures, learning from each other and growing together. One evening, as the stars appeared in the sky, Lyra sat by the small fire outside the house, the ring on her finger glinting softly in the light. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the long months of uncertainty, hunger, and fear, and the life she had found on this distant frontier. She realized that the ranch was more than a home. It was a symbol of choice, trust, and belonging. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt truly free. She was no longer defined by survival or need. She was defined by care, understanding, and the quiet joy of living. She had found her place in the world, and she had the power to shape the future, not just for herself, but for everyone who would come to the ranch. As the night deepened and the stars shone brighter, Lyra whispered softly to herself, "This is my home. I belong here. And I will help others find their place, too." The ranch continued to grow and thrive, a living testament to the power of kindness, trust, and choice. And Lyra, once a traveler seeking only food and shelter, had become a guide, a caretaker, and a symbol of hope. She had learned that true strength was not measured in survival alone, but in the ability to care, to trust, and to create a place where others could belong. And under the endless sky, with the wind carrying the scent of earth and life, Lyra knew that she had found what she had been searching for all along: a home that was hers, a future full of possibilities, and a life worth living. She smiled softly, feeling the quiet warmth of belonging, and for the first time she was certain of one thing: she was exactly where she was meant to be.